He left his girlfriend at the airport. But fate had other plans. It was a rainy evening in London, and the airport was buzzing with the usual chaos of travelers, trolleys clattering, and announcements echoing across the terminal. James stood by the departure gate, checking his watch for what felt like the 100th time. Beside him, Emma clutched her passport and ticket, her eyes welling up as she struggled to hide her disappointment. I can't believe you're really leaving," she whispered, voice trembling. James forced a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Emma, it's just a short trip. I'll be back in a few months. You'll be fine." But as she hugged him, a sudden pang of guilt hit him. He had been distant lately, cold even, and the truth was, he wasn't sure he wanted to be tied down anymore. Just as the final boarding call rang, he pulled away, leaving her standing there, watching the love of her life walk away. She felt her heart shatter as he disappeared through the gate, and a cold realization sank in. This wasn't just a goodbye, it felt like the end. Emma wandered to a nearby cafe, rain dripping off her coat, her mind racing. She sipped her coffee, trying to steady herself, but the emptiness gnawed at her. Just when she thought she would drown in sorrow, her phone buzzed. A notification from a stranger. "Are you Emma? I found something that belongs to you." Confused, she opened the message. It was a photo of a small, leather envelope lying on a rainy street outside the airport. Inside, a folded note peeked out. Heart racing, she realized it was James' handwriting. The message read, "I messed up. Meet me at the old pier at midnight. Don't come if you've moved on." Emma stared at the screen, disbelief and curiosity warring inside her. Why would he risk reaching out like this? Against every logical thought, she found herself boarding a late-night bus toward the pier, the city lights reflecting in puddles like shattered memories. When she arrived, the pier was deserted, mist curling over the water, and her heart thumped as she spotted a figure at the far end, shivering in the cold. James. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. As she approached, he turned, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "I shouldn't have left you, not like that," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I knew what I wanted, but leaving made me realize. I don't want a life without you." Emma's anger flickered, but so did a lingering warmth, the part of her that had loved him unconditionally. She took a step closer, her heart still pounding. Then, just as the tension seemed unbearable, a sudden sound echoed from behind. A splash, a shout. From the fog, a small boat was drifting toward the pier, rocking violently. Someone on board was calling for help. Without thinking, Emma and James ran toward the edge, hands reaching out. Emma and James sprinted toward the pier, hearts hammering. The damp would slick beneath their feet. The figure in the small boat struggled to stay upright, the waves tossing it like a toy. It was a man shouting for help, his voice cracking with panic. The current was pulling the boat dangerously close to the pier's edge, and every second counted. James grabbed a thick rope that was coiled nearby and tossed one end toward the boat, shouting instructions. Emma leaned over, trying to steady the man with her hands, but the boat lurched violently, sending a wave of icy water over them. Her coat was soaked, clinging to her, but she barely noticed. All that mattered was keeping the man from being swept away. "Hold on! Grab the rope!" James yelled, tension etched across his face. The man finally managed to snatch the rope with trembling hands, and James began pulling with every ounce of strength he had. Emma wrapped her arms around the man from the side, holding him steady, shouting encouragement. Minutes felt like hours as the water slammed against the boat, each wave threatening to tip it over. Finally, with a grunt of effort, James heaved the boat close enough for the man to climb aboard the pier. Emma helped him scramble up, both of them dripping and shivering, the chill of the night seeping into their bones. The man collapsed, gasping for breath, and finally managed a shaky smile. Thank you so much. I thought I was done for." James looked at Emma, their eyes meeting, and in that moment everything else, the anger, the heartbreak, the months of silence, faded into the background. They had just risked everything together, and somehow it had reminded them of the bond they shared, the connection that had never truly broken. The man, still catching his breath, explained that he had been alone on the boat, testing a small model he had built, when the tide suddenly pulled him out farther than he expected. He was a scientist working on marine technology, and the boat was experimental. His relief was genuine, his gratitude overwhelming, but for Emma and James, the adrenaline and the shared danger had already done something else. It had reopened the door between them. James turned to Emma, voice low but earnest. "I shouldn't have left you at the airport. I was scared." "Of what?" "Of losing freedom. Of failing. I don't know. All I know is that when I saw you here tonight, helping someone, I realized that some things are worth facing your fears for. You're worth it." Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She had been hurt, yes, deeply, but seeing him here, vulnerable and genuine, something stirred inside her. "You left," she said softly, her voice shaking. "That's not something I can just forget." "I know," James admitted, his gaze steady. "And I'm not asking you to forget. I want a chance to prove that I can be better, that we can be better together." The rain began to ease, mist curling around them as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting. Emma studied him, weighing the words, the emotions, the raw honesty in his eyes. She saw not the man who had abandoned her but the man who had just risked everything to help someone in need, who had returned despite his mistakes, and who, despite everything, still loved her. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Then, almost instinctively, Emma reached for his hand. Their fingers intertwined, hesitant at first, then firmer, as if they were both silently agreeing to try again, to let fate guide them this time rather than fear. "Let's not make promises we can't keep," she said, voice trembling but steady. "Let's just see where this goes." James nodded, relief and hope flooding his expression. "Agreed. No promises, just us." They stood together, soaked and shivering, the night air wrapping around them like a blanket, and for the first time in months, they laughed. A short, breathless laugh, but a genuine one. The sound echoed across the pier, mingling with the gentle lapping of the water, as if the world itself was acknowledging their fragile reconciliation. The man they had saved waved from the pier's edge, now calmer, and Emma and James turned to him, smiling faintly. "Go on," James said. "Get home safe. You've got quite a story to tell." The man nodded, still visibly shaken but grateful, and disappeared down the pathway toward the city, leaving the couple alone once more. The mist thinned slightly, revealing the faint outline of the city skyline across the river, lights twinkling like stars reflected on water. It felt surreal, almost cinematic, a perfect backdrop for a night that neither of them would ever forget. Emma leaned against James, her shoulder brushing his chest, feeling the warmth beneath the wet layers. "I can't believe all this happened in one night," she murmured. "Neither can I," James replied, wrapping an arm around her. "But maybe that's the point. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. Sometimes it just throws you into the storm and you either sink or hold on." Emma looked up at him, a small, uncertain smile forming. "And maybe sometimes you find out that the person worth holding on to was right there all along." James tightened his hold slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had rekindled. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a quiet, almost magical stillness. The pier, the river, the city lights, it all felt suspended in time, a moment carved out just for them. They stayed there for what felt like hours, talking softly, sharing memories, confessing regrets, and laughing at the absurdity of how life had brought them to this point. Each word, each glance, seemed to rebuild the bridge that had been burned, brick by careful brick. And as the night deepened, a single thought lingered in both their minds. Maybe fate had indeed intervened, not just to save a stranger, but to save them as well. The city lights reflected off the river like scattered diamonds as Emma and James walked slowly down the pier, still holding hands. The adrenaline from the rescue had faded, leaving a quiet, almost fragile sense of peace between them. But neither of them knew that the night was far from over. A sudden vibration on Emma's phone made her jump. It was a message from an unknown number. You helped him tonight. Now someone needs your help even more. Meet me at the Riverside Cafe near Tower Bridge. Midnight. Come alone. She glanced at James, alarm flashing in her eyes. What is it? He asked, noticing her pale expression. I don't know, she admitted. It's strange. But it feels urgent. James hesitated. The night had already been a roller coaster. They had rekindled something fragile and precious, and now this cryptic message threatened to pull them back into chaos. But Emma's resolve was strong. I have to go. I can't ignore it. James studied her face, then nodded reluctantly. Okay. But I'm coming with you. No way I'm letting you go alone. Emma smiled faintly, touched by his protectiveness. They hailed a cab, the driver weaving through the wet London streets while the neon lights smeared across the windows. Emma's mind raced with possibilities. Was it some prank, a scam, or something more serious? Whatever it was, her gut told her it couldn't wait. They arrived at the cafe just as the clock struck midnight. The streets were eerily quiet, the air thick with mist curling from the Thames. The cafe's warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, a small beacon in the fog. Inside, a figure sat at a corner table, face hidden beneath the brim of a hat. Emma's heart skipped. Are you the one who sent the message? She asked cautiously. The figure looked up slowly, revealing a young woman, eyes wide and trembling. Yes, thank God you came. It's my brother. He's missing. He went out tonight and hasn't returned. The police aren't taking it seriously, and I don't know where else to turn. James and Emma exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. This was bigger than a romantic reconciliation. Someone's life was at stake, and fate had thrown them into it. Tell us everything, James said, his voice calm but firm. The woman explained that her brother, a journalist investigating illegal activities in the city, had gone to meet a source and never returned. She feared he had been kidnapped or worse. Emma's mind whirled. London was dangerous at night, and the riverfront had long been notorious for shady dealings. We'll help, Emma said, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. James nodded. We can't waste time. Where was the last place he was seen? They left the cafe and walked briskly toward the location the woman described, the night air sharp against their wet coats. Street lamps flickered above them, casting long shadows that danced across the cobblestones. Every alleyway seemed like it could hide danger, every passing figure a potential threat. Emma's pulse quickened with fear and anticipation. As they approached a deserted warehouse by the river, Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. James squeezed her hand, sensing her tension. Stay close, he whispered. No sudden moves. Through the broken windows of the warehouse, they could see faint silhouettes moving inside. The brother was there, tied to a chair, struggling against his bonds. Panic surged in Emma's chest, but she forced herself to think clearly. We need a plan, James muttered. I'll create a distraction. You get him out. Emma nodded, gripping her phone tightly. James disappeared into the shadows, making noise to draw the attention of the men inside. Heart pounding, Emma crept to the side entrance, slipping inside. The warehouse smelled of damp metal and oil, and her footsteps echoed unnervingly. The men inside hadn't noticed her yet, distracted by James' shouts. Emma's hand trembled as she approached the chair where the brother was bound. I'm here to help you, she whispered, cutting the ropes with a small pocket knife. He looked up, eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. Who are you? He asked, his voice hoarse. Just someone who doesn't believe in leaving people behind, Emma said, glancing toward the chaos James was creating. They moved cautiously, weaving between crates and avoiding the men's line of sight. James intercepted one of the men who tried to pursue them, tackling him to the ground silently but effectively. The trio slipped through a side exit and ran toward the riverfront, adrenaline keeping their muscles sharp despite exhaustion. Outside, the fog was denser now, obscuring their path, but a faint sound of a riverboat nearby gave them a chance. They sprinted toward it, the water reflecting the lights of the city like shards of glass. The boat's operator, startled by the sudden appearance of 3 drenched figures, nodded without question, understanding the urgency. As the boat moved away from the warehouse and into the darkness, the 3 of them collapsed onto the deck, panting and shivering. Emma looked at James. His eyes filled with the same mix of adrenaline and relief that mirrored her own. "We did it," she whispered, though her voice was barely audible over the engine and the water lapping against the hull. James shook his head, a tired but triumphant smile forming. "This night, it's insane. But somehow, it feels like everything we've been through led to this moment." The brother, still catching his breath, finally managed a weak laugh. "I don't even know your names, but thank you. You saved my life." Emma and James exchanged a glance, the unspoken bond between them stronger than ever. Each had faced danger, fear, and uncertainty, yet somehow they had survived together. And in the midst of chaos, their connection had not just survived. It had grown deeper and more resilient than before. As the boat glided silently along the river, London's skyline stretching before them like a jagged crown of lights, Emma realized that fate had a strange way of working. It could tear people apart, test their limits, and throw them into storms they weren't ready for. But it could also guide them, challenge them, and bring them closer in ways they could never have anticipated. James reached for her hand, and she took it without hesitation. For the first time that night, there was no fear, no uncertainty, only the knowledge that, no matter what came next, they would face it together. And as the first hints of dawn began to soften the city's edges, painting the fog in pale gold, Emma knew one thing for certain. This night, with all its peril and revelation, had changed everything. The first light of dawn stretched across London, softening the harsh lines of the city and turning the river into a ribbon of gold and silver. Emma and James sat side by side on the deck of the boat, their bodies still trembling from the events of the night, their clothes drenched, hair plastered to their faces, but their spirits inexplicably lighter. The city was waking up slowly, unaware of the storm of emotions and danger that had swept through just hours before. James broke the silence, voice low, almost reverent. "I never thought one night could change everything. I walked away from you at the airport thinking I was protecting myself from what I didn't understand. But now I see that running only made the truth louder. I don't want to run anymore, Emma. Not from you. Not from us." Emma turned to him, the morning light catching the edges of her tears, turning them into tiny prisms. "We've faced fear tonight, real fear," she said softly. "I saw life hanging by a thread, I felt how fragile it all is, and somehow, we made it through. Together. That's what matters." James's fingers brushed against hers, tentative at first, then firmer as he pulled her closer. "Together," he echoed, as if speaking the word aloud made it a promise they both felt deep in their bones. "We survived more than danger. We survived ourselves, the doubts, the mistakes, everything that kept us apart." Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, a mixture of relief, triumph, and disbelief. She could still feel the cold water seeping through her clothes, the exhaustion weighing on her body, yet her heart felt lighter than it had in months. In that moment, she understood something profound. Life was unpredictable, perilous, and sometimes cruel, but it was also miraculous, filled with moments that demanded courage and rewarded the brave. As the boat glided closer to the pier, James held her hand tightly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know I don't deserve your trust yet," he admitted, "but I want to earn it every single day. I don't want to imagine life without you in it. And if fate keeps giving us chances like tonight, then I swear I will never let them slip away again." Emma smiled, a genuine radiant smile that warmed him more than the sunlight ever could. "Fate. It's strange, isn't it? Cruel sometimes. But tonight it didn't just test us. It showed us who we really are, what we're capable of, and what we can mean to each other. I think maybe we were meant to find each other again, even in the storm." James pulled her into a hug, tight and protective, yet tender, as though he could shield her from everything the world had to throw at them. Emma rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, feeling the strength and certainty in his arms. The city stretched endlessly around them, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt infinite, limitless, and full of possibilities. They stood there for a long moment, letting the silence between them speak louder than words ever could. Every misstep, every moment of doubt, every tear shed and every fear faced had led them to this. Standing together on the edge of a new day, hearts entwined, ready to face whatever came next. The brother they had saved had disappeared into the waking city, forever changed by the courage and selflessness of two strangers turned heroes. But Emma and James knew that the night's events would linger with them always. It was not just a story of danger or suspense. It was a story of redemption, of choices, of love that refused to die even when tested by betrayal and fear. As they walked off the boat and onto the pier, the mist dissipating behind them, Emma glanced up at James, a question lingering in her eyes that didn't need words. He understood instantly. No promises, no guarantees, just the willingness to face the future together, step by step, heart by heart. They paused at the edge of the pier, watching the sunrise paint the Thames in shades of pink, gold, and amber. For a fleeting moment, the city seemed to hold its breath, suspended in perfect stillness, as if acknowledging that something extraordinary had unfolded amidst the chaos. Emma took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp morning air, feeling a profound sense of hope and renewal wash over her. James's hand found hers again, fingers interlacing naturally. "Whatever comes next," he said, voice firm but gentle, "we face it together. No running, no hiding, no fear. Just us like this, and the rest of the world can wait." Emma smiled, and this time her smile reached her eyes, warm, fearless, and unshakable. "Together," she repeated, the word echoing in her chest, resonating with a certainty that had been forged in the fire of the night's trials. She had faced loss, abandonment, danger, and uncertainty, yet here she was, stronger, braver, and more alive than ever before. The Thames glittered under the rising sun, reflecting their intertwined shadows on the water, a symbol of the bond that had been tested, strained, but ultimately unbroken. Every heartbeat, every glance, every shared breath was a testament to the resilience of the human heart, to the way love could survive when nurtured by courage and honesty. Emma and James began walking toward the city, side by side, the mist fading behind them and the light of a new day stretching ahead. Each step was unhurried, deliberate, as if they were savoring the rare, precious moment of calm after the storm. Around them, London stirred to life, unaware that a story of danger, redemption, and love had just been written in its streets. And as the morning sun climbed higher, warming their faces and drying the rain from their clothes, they understood, without saying it aloud, that they had been given a second chance, not just at love, but at life itself. They had survived the night, faced the impossible, and discovered something far more powerful than fear: the unshakable, enduring strength of the human spirit, and the extraordinary magic of love that refuses to let go. For Emma and James, the airport goodbye had been nothing more than a cruel illusion, a test they had passed, a turning point that had brought them back together in a way neither of them could have imagined. And in that moment, on the quiet pier, with the city awakening around them, they knew that whatever storms awaited in the future, they would face them side by side, fearless, unyielding, and united, bound by the extraordinary night that had changed everything. The world felt endless, the possibilities infinite, and in each other's eyes, they saw not just the reflection of the past, but the promise of a future forged in courage, hope, and undeniable love, a story that would echo in their hearts forever.